23. Ashley fought the urge to vomit as she stared at what was left of Neil Wilson. Her nausea stemmed not just from the sight of blood, mangled flesh, and splattered brains, but from the stench. The odor that permeated the room Neil had used as the office could best be described as rotting fruit, decaying meat, and feces all mixed together. It was the worst smell she ever encountered, and she knew it was one she'd never forget. Although it was uncomfortable, she kept the front of her shirt pulled up over her nose. Not that it helped much. Now she understood the story she heard about cops smearing Vicks vapor rubs under their nose before entering a location that contained a dead body. But she felt certain that even the pungent aroma of Vicks wouldn't be enough to mask the putrid odor. The thought of calling 911 danced through her mind, but nothing could be done to save Neil. Rushing to inform the police of his death was not only unnecessary, it could prove to be a fatal mistake in her search for Ethan. The fact that Ray's brother was dead increased the urgency of her investigation. A major lead had no doubt been extinguished, and she knew that until her ex-husband was stopped, the body count would continue to rise. The loss of the 4 lives stung her heart, filling her with guilt. The police had made no headway in their search for her ex-husband, wasting valuable time concentrating their efforts in Alabama. Every day that Ethan remained free offered him a chance to take another life. She couldn't allow his reign of terror to go on. It was time to take matters into her own hands. If there was a clue here as to her ex-husband's whereabouts, she needed to find it. From what she learned from studying forensic science, Neil appeared to have died several hours earlier, maybe even sometimes during the previous night. Although the air conditioning was on and the temperature felt like it hovered in the mid-70s, the body had already begun to decompose, hence the smell of gases and chemical being released. Neil had been shot, that much was obvious. The top of his head had exploded, leaving a hollowed-out red mess on top of an intact lower jaw. Although she remembered his hair color had been dark brown, which matched the hair remaining in the nape of his neck, with his face disintegrated, she wouldn't be able to swear the body actually belonged to Neil. But since this was his house, it was a safe assumption. Ashley felt her stomach drop and her vision begin to blur as the reality of the scene hit her. She leaned back against the door frame, studying herself, fearing she might faint. Even though she had studied graphic photographs of crime scenes in class, the pictures she'd observed hadn't prepared her for finding Neil. The photos had in no way dampened the horror of witnessing the aftermath from the fatal gunshot. She pressed her eyes closed and waited for her lightheadedness to pass. When she opened her eyes again, she tried to focus her gaze away from the from the wound and onto the desk and the area around Neil. His right hand had gripped a revolver. It appeared to be a much larger caliber than the weapon Ashley now held. From the way his body slumped forward with both arms folded at the elbow in front of him, he must have been leaning over the desk when he pulled the trigger. If he pulled the trigger. Holstering her Smith & Wesson, Ashley made her way further into the room and moved around the side of the desk. She glanced at the scene of the laptop situated on the corner. No apps were open. Neil had chosen a mountain waterfall scene as his wallpaper. Maybe it reminded him of an old home in Metler Ridge. A white piece of paper peeked out from beneath his left arm. There was handwriting on the paper in black ink, but too much was hidden for her to make out what it said. A suicide note? Or was it just a ruse? Had Ethan committed another murder, setting a stage to make the wound appear self-inflicted? Except for his mistake of being caught on video surveillance at the hospital, he managed to eliminate the physical evidence that would tie him to the previous deaths. Why should this one be any different? What would motivate her ex-husband to murder Neil? Maybe Neil had teamed up with Ray and was helping to orchestrate the fake sighting of Ethan in Alabama. After his brother's murder, he could have threatened to go to the police and spill her ex-husband's location. Or maybe Ethan had just held a grudge against him and wanted him eliminated. The answer might be on Neil's computer, the most obvious place, but any important file he had would probably require a password to open. Although she knew nothing should be disturbed, the urge to search through Neil's desk drawers tugged at her. What could it hurt? She would be careful, would put things back exactly the way she found them. But if Ethan was the killer, if he'd been here, would he have been foolish enough to leave evidence behind? Not likely. He would have stolen the laptop if he thought anything of value was on the hard drive, and he would have removed any information contained in the desk drawers. On the other hand, what if Neil really had killed himself? The key to locating her ex-husband could be right here in this room. The computer password, if there was one, could be hidden in the desk. Now that the home was a crime scene, Ashley needed to worry about fingerprints. If she touched the computer keys, they'd have to be clean. She already left her prints on doors and doorknobs. Exactly. She'd have to go back and wipe down everything before she left. Then she'd call Detective Lansing. But what would she tell him? Hey, detective, guess what? I let myself into another person's home, and when I found him dead, instead of calling the police, I searched through his things. Somehow, she knew that wouldn't fly. She figured out what to tell the detective later. For now, exploring the desk was her priority. She grabbed a tissue from the box next to the body, then she caught herself. What if there was microscopic back spray on the thin paper? Would the police be able to tell a tissue had been taken after Neil fired the gun? There were times when a master in criminal justice proved to be a curse. Without the training, she wouldn't be second-guessing everything. She would just act. I got a thought. But what did it matter if the police realized the tissue was missing? They wouldn't know who had taken it, not unless she confessed to Detective Lansing. Ashley, are you the one doing all of this? Using a tissue as a barrier to prevent leaving her prints, she pulled open the file drawer at the bottom right of the desk. Alphabetical tabs in a rainbow of neon colors organized the contents. She flipped through the hanging files to the letter B, looking for a folder for Ethan Barrett. There wasn't one. But she did find a yellow folder labeled Briarwood. A map and other general information on the area were inside. Normal literature for someone looking to purchase a home. Moving on, she scanned through C, D, and E. When she hit the letter F, her breath caught in her throat. She stared at the file. It read Dr. Charles Fisher. Why would Neil need an OBGYN? She stuck her tissue-wrapped index finger inside the box. She found documents detailing the doctor's work schedule, the name of his family members, his address, and a map to his home. The realization hit hard. Neil had been the person supplying Ethan with information on Ashley. She glanced at the cold body to her left. Did Neil regret helping her ex-husband? Could his remorse have caused him to fire a bullet into his own head? She couldn't think of any other explanation for the file on Dr. Fisher still being here. Ethan never would have left it behind. She flipped forward, skipping the G section, moving instead to H. Just as she suspected, two files met her gaze. One labeled Brett Holbrook and the other bearing her own name, Ashley Hope. For now, she decided to skip past her fiancé's file and dig into her own. She wanted to know exactly what information Neil had collected on her and how he uncovered it. Ashley's heart skipped a beat when she heard Neil's doorbell chime. Adrenaline rushing through her, she pushed the file drawer closed and crept out of the office and into the hallway. She peeked around the corner and down the staircase trying to see the person on the other side of the front door. Due to the texture pattern of the glass, she could only make out a dark silhouette. Maybe a door-to-door salesman. At least that's what she hoped. The bell rang again, reverberating through the house. Frozen in the hallway, she heard a fist pound against the door, followed by a deep baritone. "Briarwood PD, open the door, Mr. Wilson," the voice ordered. Shit! Ashley was trapped with a dead body in a home she'd broken into, and she was carrying a concealed weapon. There was no way she could make it down the stairs without being seen. No possible avenue to escape. If the cop continued to get no answer, would he leave? Or would he come in through the back door the same way she had? Neil had been dead for a while. What if his employer had called in a welfare check? If that was the case, the police officer wouldn't leave until he made sure everything was okay inside the house, even if it meant breaking in. There were only two choices. Number one, hide and run the risk of being found in the house with a corpse, which wouldn't look suspicious at all. Or number two, open a door, explain the situation, and hope for the best. "Mr. Wilson," the baritone voice called out again, followed by another pounding knock. She had to make a decision fast. Ashley forced her feet to move. With her heart thrashing in her chest, she navigated her way down the stairs. What have I gotten myself into? Exactly. Her mind raced as she tried to figure out what she could say, how to explain. As she crossed the small foyer, a vision of herself in handcuffs flashed before her eyes. Ashley took a deep breath and pulled the front door open. See you in the next chapter.